the rivers and lakes that surround New Orleans. And so storms are coming faster and harder than they have before, and we cannot pump our way out of this. We have to learn to live with water, and that includes natural-based solutions like you were talking about. It includes planting trees, Mayor. We also have a massive tree planting project underway right now. It involves things like rain gardens and bioswales that naturally hold the water, so that we're not just pumping out water all the time. Because when you're pumping out water, you're also pumping out the earth with that water. And these natural gardens and green structures and plants, they naturally hold the water. And this is the way that it's nature-based solution. It's the way that our planet was supposed to work. And so we're looking at those three approaches, and particularly with the green infrastructure approach, that's a huge project for the city right now. We have a massive project underway in one of our neighborhoods with a whole bunch of these different green infrastructure programs right now that show that we can live with water, and not only does it protect us from flooding, but it also beautifies the city. It provides additional trees that protects us against heat islands, and I'm sure this is an issue with so many of your cities across the world. And so we're looking to take this entire approach of learning to live with water, and hope that with these investments, disasters like Hurricane Katrina won't happen again.
Merci beaucoup. Merci.
Thank you so much. It's a very good example of solution based on nature-based solution that were put in place. And so when we pump waters in some places, we have the risk of pumping also the sand, the soil. So thank you. And to just complete or continue in thinking of solution and manage water resources, we try to connect with the mayor of Jericho. So we leave coastal cities and we go to a particular city which is threatened by climate change.
Monsieur le maire, nous serions...
So, Mr. Mayor, we will be honored to hear the message, to understand how Jericho is threatened and what are the solutions that you were able to develop up to now.
Monsieur le maire, vous avez la parole.
Mr. Mayor, the floor is over to you. Mr. Mayor, the floor is over to you. Mr. Mayor, we can't hear you. Mr. Mayor, can you hear us? Because we can't hear you. Peut-être que votre...
Can you check if the volume is on your own computer? And if you're not mute? Écoutez, je suis navré, on ne peut toujours pas vous entendre. Donc écoutez, on va laisser les équipes techniques essayer de régler ce problème. Ça fonctionnera. Et on va continuer avec Monsieur Lair qui représente.
So we're going to continue with Mr. Lair representing the city of Paris. So can we present how Paris is handling those issues? I'm so sorry for the mayor of Jericho. we have a cooperation project with him, and then here maybe we'll talk about that later. I would like to just address my word of solidarity toward the mayor of Paris, and then those phenomena shows we have climate change everywhere in the world, and in Paris we publish a study on the climate, the future of our cities, and the first challenge will be hit there by 2030. And the scientists that are assisting the city of Paris to fight against climate change, you see, we have that peak, that level of heat in our country, and the objective is for us to get prepared to those impact in order to protect the population. So I will present our water resources strategy. What we know with hot summer and the need to refresh the city, the water may be submitted to strong tension after 2050. So what we did, we taught the private company the management of water services. So we assured the production, the transportation, and water control, water quality control. So in Paris,
elle assure de la
so we make sure that that running water is available for more than 2 million of people. So we have in Paris a sustainable management water resources model, and in Paris is lucky enough to have a resilient water resources. We have 50% of water comes from the underground, and 50% of the come from other surface. With those very sources, we benefited resilient in the face of drought risk. If the problem of water resource quality is not for us a danger to just distribute water for citizens, we know that quality water is a key point for us. Knowing the reduction of the quantity of water, the philosophy in Paris is that we aim at protect our water sources, and also instead of using treatment techniques that sometimes are not useful and are costly, so for us to treat polluted water because of agriculture, what we prefer is to work on the protection of water resources. So what do we do to protect water resources? Paris made the choice to assist farmers there. So what we do is that the sources that are providing Paris in water are on agricultural area. So where we go when we go and look for the water to the remote places. So this is a significant effort that we do. So to protect water quality, Paris put in place a direct system to help for agriculture, and that was approved by the European Commission. More than 50 million euros are invested, and 20% and a share 20%. So this helped the farmers for agriculture transition. We assist those farmers to be in line with climate change-based action, and this is in line with that 5 years transition. What we do is all those areas to be involved, and then we want to make the farmers' work easier, and they have to contribute through their water bills. And then just aside of that, we have a protection team which assists the farmers protected water by reducing pesticides and nitrate. We also increase our land, and then what we do, we mobilize new land tools in order to go to that direction.
Dû au transfert, les plus fragiles, au transfert de pollution. On favorise à travers ce...
So what we do with this work with the farmers, we develop some sectors that can reduce pollution with the development of some sectors in order to reduce the pollution. We also create new solutions for agricultural products. So we have the agreement with the restoration of canteen in Paris schools, which allow us to have a winning partnership, and which allow us to protect water, the quality of the food that is produced there. And as a water public operator, we are commit ourselves in a global ecologist approach and a long-term approach to protect that water resource. So when we work as a water operator to protect resources, so we also work and we also involve our water plants by avoiding heavy investment, and we also have the mark of the water management. We have a level of investment which enables us to assure the management of that water. So Port Paris is deeply committed in eco transition. We are committing to eco transition committed through the installation of the new renewable energy plant construction, and we have geothermal energy. Also, we may say that we go in that line. We participate in the strategy of refreshment of the city of Paris. So where we deploy in cities, we have a fountain now that we just put there. So we have more than 1,000 of as fountain. So like the tourists that came to Paris, we have traders who commit themselves in giving water to those citizens in Paris. So all Paris commit themselves against the pollutions of those water bottles that we see in our oceans, which is harmful to us. So in France, 1 bottle over 2 bottles is recycled, and we have 1 billion of liters of water which are in bottled every year. So just to show you how it is significant. So what we would like to do in Paris is to be the first city of zero plastic. So this I know this topic is not in line with our topic, but it's also good to know it. And we think that all the association and NGOs have to contribute to solve this problem and take up this challenge. In doing that, we have a role to play for Paris citizens, and more than hundreds and thousands of bottles will be handled this year. So I wanted to share the solution with you and also commend all the delegation of mayors that are present here and who are inspiring us to adapt our strategy for the fight against climate change.
Merci beaucoup. Faites bien de souligner aussi effectivement
Thank you for underlining also the plastic issue, the bottles that constitute the waste or so. So thank you for that. We're trying to go back to Jericho, hoping that they'll be able to present us the water resources. Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
مساء الخير. اسمعوا الصوت. أنا بطلت سماعهم.
On vous entend, monsieur. On vous entend, monsieur.
مساء الخير للجميع. بداية بدي أشكر زميلي اللي سبقني إنه رؤساء البلديات هم الأقوى. راح كله. مش سامع. لا شيء.
Monsieur Al-Karim. Monsieur Al-Karim, on vous écoute. On vous écoute.
لا فيش صوت المر ولا خرفش ولا شيء. مسموع. مسموع. مسموع هيك صوت.
احنا مش سامعين صوت.
Monsieur Al-Karim, est-ce que vous nous entendez?
There is a problem in the sound. Please tell me.
We can hear you. Please, the floor is yours. We can hear you. We'll be happy to hear what Mr. Al-Karim have to tell us today. Bon, écoutez, ce qu'on va faire, c'est qu'on va redonner la main une fois de plus à la régie, et on est vraiment navré. Il fallait être à Abidjan aujourd'hui et pas en ligne, ça semble compliqué. Écoutez, ce qu'on va faire maintenant pour conclure ce premier tour de table, c'est accueillir Monsieur Ignace Béguin qui travaille pour l'équipe.
Works for UN Climate Champion. It's a team. So let's continue. So Ignace Béguin, thank you for joining us here. He works for UN Climate Champion. It's a team which has as objective to mobilize all the civil society actors, the private actors, the finance, the cities to work together and be part of the discussion that will take place with the local authority, with government. So that the coming one will be in Egypt. And then, so this is. So, Mr. Inyas, could you explain?
Quelles possibilités elles vont avoir de prendre part aux discussions onusiennes lors de...
Thank you, Teofil. I'm not going to share my vision, but at least we recall the vision of GIAC, which in his last report of this year, for the first time highlighted the importance of coastal cities and their reflection on climate adaptation, because it's highlighted significant challenges.
Démographique urbaine et aussi les villes côtières.
The coastal cities are hub of innovation, and we have they will contribute to the economic growth. So through the port. So for all those reasons, it's very important that in the framework of the UNFCCC negotiation of Paris agreement, we move on that things. It was also highlighted in a panel that some solution exists, but one of the key issue is the lack of funding. And that's what we are working on with Teofil, with other actors like private investors, to create an investment protocol which will help to create goods report with to make this issue is solved. Yesterday we heard during the round table those funders, they say the money is available, and one of the problem is access to funding. And we know that the blue economy is growing, and it's also a source for ports, for maritime. So how can what can we do so that all the actors should be able to have a good dialogue between themselves? And then we know it's key for private financing to be embedded. On the basis of one of the analysis that we had, and the conclusion, the financial one, is that the classic and blending funding mechanism will not be enough to meet the financial gap, the funding gap or financing gap. So we have to draw the private sector. That will be very difficult, and then we have to integrate the cost of doing. It will be costly to us to repair instead of preparing the cities, and then it is key to support development, long-term development, as it was underlined with in the panels that we had. Just to conclude and present our COP27 work, a concrete proposal. In that investment protocol framework, we invited private banks like Deutsche Bank, Societe Generale, although insurer, and investment public bank, Europe, America, in order to think of the solution to attain COP27 2027, and to share solutions that are put in place to fund adaptation for climate change. The objective here is to show to the whole world that it's possible to fund coastal cities, and not only public capital or public funding should be mobilized, but the private ones can also do. The second objective is to embed it into the agenda so that the different government and national authorities should talk about that and embed it. So this COP will be the implementation COP, and the objective is now to come out with new declaration, but that will be about demonstrating that it's possible to finance and to fund them, and then for us to meet the current challenges. Thank you. So thank you, Ignace. I will allow each of us to just say a few words about this coastal city. Should we talk about scientific knowledge? So what is the knowledge we have now, and what do we need? We've been talking about solution and then move places. We talk about protection. So we talk about the COP. We talk about funding. You know, this is the reason why we are here. So to know what is the message we're going to take to Egypt. So each quickly for each of you, can you share with us a concept, an idea that we can bear in mind, and an idea that we can take to Egypt, Mr. Mayor? So now we give the floor to the panel first, and if we have time remaining, then we will hear of the public, the audience. The microphone, if somebody is speaking in the microphone. Okay, the mayor of Asini, what I kept in mind is that in the last speaker said, we have to prepare instead of repairing. We are a small municipality of 20,000 inhabitants. So all we've been putting in place is to get ready to avoid the worst. Because from 20,000 to 150,000 inhabitants, that would be growth, significant growth of the population. Then we are running the risk not to master all the potential problems. So we have small municipality attracting crowd, attracting many people because it's a restful place. We have to get ready and prepare at the same time. So the network that we put in place by the mayors is to work together and share experiences, and with the support of World Bank, we will seek for the funding that we don't have.
Donc effectivement.
Between our urban and rural territories, so I highlighted some key issue on water, and then maybe to come back to a question related to cities, those that reacted around this roundtable. So we have in Paris the best absorptions of rainfall to avoid those floods, because we have heavy rain in Paris. So this has been highlighted by the mayor of Douala, and I think it is a very key and important key issue to better to meet this challenge. I want to talk about the water cycle. It's a little bit larger. So solidarity between urban population and rural one is key. So that may be a way to raise funds. So Mr. Mayor of Douala. So like what I said, that we thought a lot on the adaptation strategy. We have a number of projects.
So we started, we've documented with our own funds, but it's obvious that the questions of funding is central. To create a drilling is really expensive and is not rentable, it's not an investment that allows to have some revenues. It's a social investment, and it's really expensive. As I just mentioned earlier, we have 250 kilometers of drainage. If you want to avoid flooding, we have to create some drainage that we allow that when we have when we have a lot of rains, in few hours, the waters can go by these pipelines. Now, concerning the question of adaptation, we really agree with what was said. We have to replant with mangrove, which is really is essential because they protect, and also the reproduction of the fishes because it's polluted and it's disappearing. So we do what we can, but I think there is a need of financing, and we are really happy to benefit and cite some private operators that come to help us, and we can benefit for the financing but it's not enough.
We need money. I think that's the overall theme I'm hearing from my mayors and our municipalities here, and I think most of the mayors, municipalities here can agree that funding is always one of the biggest issues. And to steal what the mayor of Assigné just said, that was reiterated from our friend at the UN, prepare instead of repair. And the nature-based solutions, the green infrastructure projects that we're implementing right now pay off $6 to every $1 that we put in. So, Mayor, it may not generate the revenue, but it is an important investment. And when we talked about Hurricane Katrina earlier, not only was it one of the deadliest disasters in American history, it was also one of the costliest. So this is a smart investment. We're trying to make those investments not just on a large scale, but also make them available to businesses and homeowners as well. We have a finance authority within the city of New Orleans that is making financing available for businesses, developers who may want a rain garden that will retain water on their property, or a homeowner that wants to put permeable pavement in their driveway. We need to make those opportunities available not just to government, but also to our individual businesses and residents as well. So yeah, let's get that paper.
It's very clear.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks. Donatus, what's your key message, key recommendation?
Okay, thank you. Yes, now we know we need money for various things. For example, most coastal cities need to be relocated. Most of them, especially in Africa. If you go along the beaches, the fishermen and people who are really working at the coast are facing several challenges. So there's a lot of need for money to relocate these guys. But I will say that we need to also add the sciences. I know that we know climate change, oh, this is the rate of climate change, this is the rate of climate change. But there are underground variables, there are variables that are contributing to this climate change. So we should look at these variables and add them to the sciences, or to this climate change variable, so that if we can tackle some of these parameters, it will go a long way to also help us to solve the problem. So I recommend monitoring, continuous monitoring, and analysis in the science area with all variables involved. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Et effectivement, la science, elle aussi, aura besoin de financement.
So the science is going to need finance. So thank you very much. I'll give the floor to the organizer. Thank you very much for the panelists. We can give them another round of applause. So I will propose to try last time before letting you go to listen the mayor of Jericho is still online. We were not able to get it the first time, but we hope that this time it's going to work. If we can send the image of the of the mayor of Jericho and see if we can get in touch with him. Let's try one more time.
مساء الخير للجميع. بتمنى يكون الصوت واضح هلا مسموع. I would like to thank طيب يعني أنا بدي بداية أعرف عن مدينتي، مدينة أريحة الجميلة. هي قطع
On est un peu désolé pour ces problèmes techniques, mais on va devoir renoncer à l'intervention du maire de Jéricho. C'est trop compliqué, on n'y arrive manifestement pas. Ce que je vous propose, c'est qu'avant de vous laisser redescendre, on va peut-être laisser la parole, monsieur, si vous en êtes d'accord, mais juste pendant 2 minutes, parce qu'on a très peu de temps. Vous devez avoir un micro pas loin de vous. Je pense que madame, qui est à votre droite, va vous en donner un. Et vous avez 2 minutes pour intervenir, monsieur. Hein.
Merci. Je m'appelle monsieur Dodo Abdou, je suis le président de l'association des municipalités du Niger. Donc, mais au rythme que ça partait, on va clôturer, on n'a pas entendu la voix du Sahel. L'IMF et particulièrement la maire de Paris qui nous a invités.
So I would like to say that all the effects of the climate change are all related to the Sahel and the desert. For all that know something about history and the ocean, today is all the sand, and the sand is going in big steps, and the ocean will not be excluded if we do not take the problem by its root. So today, with the effects of the climate change, the Sahel from the Sahara all the way to the border here in Abidjan, the desertification is going quickly. So if we go in the summit of Egypt and talk again about oceans, knowing that we are facing a different situation. So I would like to tell you the concern of the Sahel. We are at the month of June and we are going to July. And as of now, we still do not have rain. So 50% of people from Niger are living in a territory where is 1,267 kilometers square. It's twice France and twice Belgium. So this is our concern. And my second concern, yesterday the regional president of Nouakchott intervened to talk about the concern and the ownership of all the process by the local authorities to transmit the skills and the resources. So we are really suffering and nothing is moving on. And France and our authorities that put in place the decentralization in Africa, and particularly in Niger, if today in the case of the approach of the decentralization, all those questions, they are really here. I think the AIMF has taken the step forward, and Jean-Pierre Baillet has been working with us from a long time, since Simon Campore, and today the mayor of Paris, I would like to say that we were able to move a little bit further to fight the concern, because the problem of the climate change is the human threat of the desertification. At the level of Niger, as Burkina, the question of general or natural regeneration. So we have to tackle the problem by its root. So we really need to tackle that. So thank you very much. So thank you, sir. Thank you to our panelists for this roundtable on the water. That was really important for the first edition of the City Cups. Thank you very much for your contribution. We will now go to the second edition of the Initiative of Paris for the preservation of the forest and the biodiversity. I will invite Arnaud Ngacha, the deputy of the mayor of Paris. Paris hosted the first edition of the Initiative of Paris, October 6, 2021. I'm also calling the other participant of this roundtable to come up here. Mr. Lee White, Mr. Bolivar Guidar. I will give the floor to Mr. Ngacha. Thank you. We are still waiting for Mr. Eti Atalanga. I don't know if he's in the room. We are still waiting for him. Mr. the Minister of the Water, of the Forest, Sea and the Environment of Gabon, Mr. Lee White, Mr. the Representative with the Minister of the Forest of Côte d'Ivoire, Mr. the Mayor of Yaoundé, Mr. the Representative, ladies and gentlemen, the mayors and elected, thank you very much for being present to this round table. Just to tell you that it's a real pleasure today to open this second initiative of Paris on the preservation of the forest and biodiversity after the first meeting that took place in the Hotel of Ville of Paris. And back in the day, I wanted that this second edition take place in the African continent, and I'm really happy that was able to take place in Côte d'Ivoire, in this country that really takes care of its forest. So Hotel of Ville held the first edition. I would like to thank all the participants that came to the first edition, and also thank all that gave us the honor to be here, and all our speakers that were present here that came to Abidjan. So we left 9 months ago by talking about the essential role of the forests of Central Africa in our ecosystem, by talking the issues of protection of and the fight against the climate change, and also prevention of the epidemic. Is for that we gave the floor to the youth, to the women, to the local people. They are the ones that are more vulnerable to put in light their spirit, their commitment, and the willing for change. And before starting this round table, I was with the mayor of Paris, which is now meeting some young activists for the climate. And the action and the presence is really essential in this fight. So 9 months later, we have again this opportunity to meet in the context of this COP of cities to make the international community the importance for this, for the humanity, and that debate that can finish by a political fight against the deforestation. So the first edition was a diagnostic of the threat for the forests of Central Africa. Now we are precisely talking about the action that were taken in favor of the forest, and also the solution that were adopted by the cities, and the relationship between the cities and the states, and the essential problematic concerning the investments and financing. And I'm really happy to have the Minister Lee White, which is a specialist of the question of financing. I was talking with him before an interview that I was able to read at this subject, and I'm sure he will tell you about that later. The problematic of climate at the heart of the international agenda at this year 2022 here in Africa, because we have some major big event in the continent. And for example, COP15, the fight against the desertification here in Abidjan. Last month, the 9th Forum of Water in Dakar in March. And particularly attentive because I'm the president of a group of country, Senegal, and I'm really attentive to everything that is going on in Dakar in Senegal. I'm looking at you because I know you have the same concern that we have. We have some other things coming up. The mayor recall like the COP27 in November. Those events will be to put in place the ambition of the African actors, whether they are political, economical, or civil, to fight the global warming and the deforestation. So a little notice that we are in a critical point. We have to go quickly. A study of the WWF between 2004 and 2017, 4 million hectares of forests were taken off. For example, in the country of Morocco, the DRC lost, for example, in 2020, more than 500,000 hectares. Of course, the degrees of ambition, all the countries of Central Africa take some commitment to protect the forests with the agreement of Paris in the climate. I would like to salute the action of the governments as well as of Cameroon, Côte d'Ivoire, Senegal, Rwanda. My dear Prudence, I know how that question is essential for in your country. The challenge is to get to 1.5 degree by the end of this 21st century, and also the massive in Congo of CO2, which is about 2 years of global emission. The last 26 COP recalled us to demonstrate this dissociation between the countries of the North and the South, mainly of the obligation, I think, being here in the African continent to listen to the actors and take into consideration the action, because there are some economical concerns that they have to take into consideration in the development while respecting those commitments of reduction and preservation of the planet is, for me, very essential. So the sub-Saharan African, the soil is being degraded. We have a lot of droughts that are more frequent, and also the pressure of human activities with the intensive agriculture and the trade of wood. We have 35% of the emerging soil are being transformed by human activities. 40% of them have been devastated. So we have to wait a small degradation of 40% of soil in the American soil. So we have to act quickly. The local collectivities took a leadership of the challenges of the climate change. So during the COP15 in Abidjan, the COP10 of the Convention of the Nation on the Fight Against the Initiations is an initiative that has to be saluted, that is testified of the awareness for the fight for the cities, and we have to act as African. So the challenges at the climate level is that we have to question ourselves in the traditional partnership, and we are the first victim of the climate wave by taking into consideration the vulnerability, by looking at the assets and the weaknesses. So we have to develop some mechanism of solutions to help those populations that do not have the choice to migrate because of the situation. Now we have the youth that did not have the choice to commit themselves, and we have to see at how the young generation is going towards the leaders to find some solutions. So we are looking into how the cities have a key role to see how they can gather and coordinate the action at the international level and seek help from the international investors and partners. So we have to act quickly to face the challenges, not by 2050, but the coming years. We are here to bring a political thought and thinking to create some political and concrete actions that will be implemented in the African continent to stop and reverse the politics of degradation of the forest and the soil. So I wish you a really good round table, and I'll thank you again. Thank you very much.
Vous, Monsieur Ngacha, Mesdames et messieurs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ngata. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Welcome everyone to this round table that is very distinguished. And I have a big honor to moderate. I would like first to thank you, Ad Indargo and Ingacho, the mayor of Paris and a deputy, and also the city of Paris and Abidjan for hosting us today, and also for the initiative of this week. I will also like to take the occasion to congratulate the city of Paris for being nominated for the prestigious award to W.E. Ross for the cities, for the city of Qatar. And also thank you for all of you, the speakers, for being with us today.
Nous continuons aujourd'hui donc le dialogue qui a été.
So we continue the dialogue that started last year in October at the occasion of the launch of the Paris Initiative for the Preservation of the Forests of Central Africa. This dialogue highlighted the emergency of the challenges that we're going to talk about today. Every year, 10 millions of hectares of forests are being destroyed, including 3 million in Africa. Those forests are the heart of the world, and they constitute the first line of defense against the climate change. And they play a key role not only in the climate rule and the resilience against the climate change, but also in the preservation of biodiversity and regulation of the waters. It directly contributes to the way of subsistence of more than 1 billion in the world. And our role today is to bring some potential solution with some concrete examples that demonstrate how cities, in collaboration with the national authorities and community and private sector, can bring the protection and rehabilitation of the forest. And I would like to highlight the major role and the major contribution of the city of Paris, and by bringing the COP of the cities, by sensitizing of this situation to preserve the forest and realization where the well-being of our planet depends on. On the other part, the cities are in the heart of the problem of the destruction and degradation of the forest and the ecosystem. The cities only occupy 2% of the territorial area, where it's 70% of the emission of the greenhouse gases, and the urban request is the first contributor of the deforestation, and is estimated that by 2050, 2/3 of the human population will live in the cities. It will be about a movement of 500 million people towards the cities, which will contribute to a triple of the urban area, and number of people will create a problem to the development of the forest. The cities also have the potential to be a central part of the solution. My colleague, the champions, mentioned that the report of the JIC that highlighted how the cities must be a central part of a global action. This is that concentration of people and resources, and that will allow the cities to bring a relationship that is most balanced between the climate and the nature. The urban politic and the practices of provision of municipalities have a big potential of support to the protection, the restoration, and the management, the sustainable management of the point. We can see here some powerful examples for what is possible when the cities are working with the national authorities and the investors. The mayor of Freetown, Aki Sawyer, inspired us with a campaign, 3 Town to 3 Town, which aimed to plant 3 million trees by the end of this year. The city of Paris identified the power of the city by catalyzing some actions while communicating with the private sector to maintain the forests in Central Africa, and more than 80 cities around the world are contributing actively as a member of the initiative Save the Forest for the good management and the restoration of the forest. Mayor Messi Atangana, I hope that we might count Yaoundé among those cities in the future. The Institute of World Resources where I work, we have to identify the opportunities of investments in the forest, such as natural infrastructure, because the forest constitute, in fact, a form of infrastructure that answers to the requests of the urban population for water and clean water, for food, for the cooling and the recreation as well. This natural infrastructure can help in an important way to reduce and fill the infrastructure deficit in sub-Saharan Africa that is estimated at $350 billion by 2040. And as we mentioned earlier, the actual financing for the adaptation is far from being adequate. That's why we are working with the World Bank of Development and the World Bank to put some big project in infrastructure in Africa that needs financing. We are going now to have the chance to hear from the mouth of experts, of world leaders in this subject that will talk. The Colonel Dogui, which is a technical advisor of the Minister of Water and Forest, and that represent the Minister Chagbam. We couldn't be here with us. We were also here talking the Minister and Professor White, which as a minister is also a distinguished academic on the efforts of Gabon to protect the forest of Gabon. And Mr. Mayor Messi Atangana, we share what Yaoundé is taking as a process to become a green city. We will also benefit of the experience of Mr. Pulga Vida, which is a pioneer in the domain. He has done a lot of initiative to protect the forest and diversity. Mr. Colonel Major Dogui Abois, I think I will start with you as a host. Thank you again for receiving us today. I would like to ask you, what are your thoughts on the roles of the cities in the protection of the forest in Côte d'Ivoire? In particular, if you can have a reference for some example of the national forest, the National Park of Banco, or the forest in the center. So you have the floor. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. As you just mentioned, I'm Colonel Major Dogui Abois. I'm engineer of water and forest. I'm working in the forest domain more than 32 years. I really master the forest, but because the forest has humans, water, and animals, so the management is becoming more and more difficult. Before starting, I would like to thank the authorities that organized this conference and take the opportunity to excuse the absence of the minister that went to the interior of the country that gave me the honor to represent him in this panel. I would also like to indicate we have the director of staff of the minister that is here, so anytime I will not give the proper information, he can bring some correction and modification. So the director of the staff of the minister is here, so thank you for being here. So before answering your question, I would like to show what is the state of the forest in Côte d'Ivoire before going to the answer of the forest and the city. In Côte d'Ivoire, you know that in the years 1960s, we had 60 million hectares of forest. But with the agriculture that was really recent, this forest group has reduced, and the inventory that was realized in 2020, we realized that there is less than 3 million hectares in Côte d'Ivoire, which means that you have 2.970 million hectares, which is unacceptable and impossible, and that does not allow to develop to have the development that we know since then. So which caused this disappearance of the forest? The agriculture is the first factor. The forest exploitation and the waste phenomenon, all this contributed to the disappearance of the forest in Côte d'Ivoire in such a way that, according to the specialists, if nothing is done in 2030, the forests of Côte d'Ivoire will disappear. And this is really bad, and is all with all that the government of Côte d'Ivoire took into consideration, and the state of the country came up with a new forest politics that developed some strategies, and also a forest code that was put in place in 2019, and this forest code is in adequation with the protection of an environment and forest in Côte d'Ivoire. So what does this forest code says? I have a link with the collectivity. In the forest code is clearly stated that the collectivity must take an important part in the rehabilitation of the forest in Côte d'Ivoire. When we talk about collectivity, we're talking about the cities, the regional council, and the communities, and the private individual can also participate and must participate to the restoration of the forest in Côte d'Ivoire. And the new forest code put an emphasis on the protection of the forest, and also in its reconstitution. That reconstitution must go for the agroforestation. I know we talk about the boom agricultural in Côte d'Ivoire, but it was acquired by the forest, and agriculture was already installed. We have to go through the agroforestation to restore the forestation, or we will not have a forest in Côte d'Ivoire. Since 2017, we noticed that the forest started to diminish. The rate of disappearance was starting to reduce. We went from 2,050 to 300,000, but since this year, since a GNO of the national authority, there is 26 million of hectares that was taken off in Côte d'Ivoire, which means that it was because of the diverse actions that was taken by the Ministry of Forest to protect the forest in Côte d'Ivoire. So I'm going more with the collectivities. When we talk about the forestal code and we look at the Article 50, it indicates that the moral people of the private and public law, the collectivities, the communities can participate at the management of the forest. And everything concerning the Ministry of Water and Forest, there are two domains. There is a private area with all the important forests, and the rural area. The rural area is everything concerning with agriculture, but with the classified forest, the agriculture is present. So everything concerning the reconstitution of the classified forest, the Article 57 allow the collectivity to come and see the Ministry of Water and Forest to have some concession, which is new in Côte d'Ivoire. The collectivities, I know that the mayor of Assini is here, he might call me. The collectivities might take the forest and manage them in concession. So the state is going to allow the management of the forest to some collectivities. What does that mean? It means that the country gives you the power to put in place some plans of implementation, put them in place, and the government is only going to have a far management and have a small monitoring. And everything concerning these aspects, the government of Côte d'Ivoire saw that the collectivities are really involved in the forest management. That is the reason why, with this opportunity for the disposal of concession, the cities reacted. Can take the case of the city of Soubré. There is already a convention with the government of Côte d'Ivoire to manage a classified forest, which is the classified forest of the Mont Kourabaï. There is also the city of Aboisseau, which put some forest in concession, which is about the forest of Souye in the village of Adaou. We also have the city of Man. We also have some forest in concession, and etc. So with time, the collectivities are seeing that they have to participate in the management of the forest. And fortunately, those classified forests are located in the territory of those cities. Concerning the action taken by the Ministry of Water and Forest in relation to the cities of Côte d'Ivoire, is some popular planting of trees. Every year, the Ministry of Water and Forest organizes some action of plantation of forests. This year, the operation was already launched and will be all around the territory of the country. One day, 10 million trees. First year it was 1 million, 5 million trees. The second year is 1 year, 2 million trees, and today is 3 days, 30 millions. Even the head of the government planted his tree in 2018, and this tree is growing very well. I would like to indicate that in this context, the Ministry of Water and Forest is also having an operation of green space in the cities. It has been materialized by many, but a lot of green spaces is allow the creation of arboretum in the cities. If you take a city as Abengourou, we put in place a link with the town hall and arboretum that is working very well. Some students go there to be instructed. It's also a place of rest and also entertainment. In the strategy also and the politics of Côte d'Ivoire is planned the creation of regional zoo. We're going to create some zoologic park in all the territory of Côte d'Ivoire. Since we know that the planting of the trees is really important, we're going to create some small part of the level of the region. It was all in our areas for planting of trees. In all the region, we're going to have some small communities in charge of this plantation. We have some other actions concerning those activities. So right now, we are talking about flooding in Abidjan. We're talking about some destruction of some fields. Mr. Mayor, President of Regions, only the plantation of trees is the best weapon to fight against everything that we're enduring right now. Why do we have flooding in Abidjan? Why do we have all this drawing in Abidjan? Is because there are no more trees in Abidjan. When you go to the area of Abobo and Cocody, there are no more trees. It's only the ground and soil. How do you want the water to penetrate the soil? We have to find a way for the water to not go up to the lagoon, because when it goes to the lagoon, it brings a lot of waste and a lot of sand. So we have to plant a lot of trees. So I'm calling all the different personalities and authorities in the management of Abidjan to face all the different problems that we are facing today. Today, the plantation of the trees is the best way to fight that. What I can also advise the mayor is to always create forests for themselves. Forests will be a source of wealth that is invaluable. If you create a forest in your region, in your cities, you're going to benefit of carbon credit. Only having a portion of forest but is well conducted and guided, you're going to benefit some carbon credit. That will be some additional sources of revenue. So to avoid all those situations, you have to plant a lot of trees. Thank you very much. So we're going to go back on this subject for financing. The mayor here of Messi Atangana of Ghana, I will go to you. The Colonel Major mentioned the importance of the agroforestation. I know you play a big role in Yaoundé to integrate the food security in the management of the urban forest. Can you share your experience with the agroforestation that the Colonel Major just highlighted as an important solution to the problem of the deforestation? Thank you. We're going to have 2 and 3 turns. If you can leave your intervention to 3 to 4 minutes to allow for the questions. So thank you. So after the initiative of Paris in relation to the preservation of the forest and the biodiversity, I was asked to present my experience of the city of Yaoundé to put in light our relations between cities and the involvement of the cities and the politics of financing the urbanism and the rise of the cities, and is almost essential for the vegetable coverage. On our relationship between the cities and states, Yaoundé, which is the capital of Cameroon, the headquarters of the institutions, as a big municipality that is called the urban municipality that has 7 municipalities. And the urban community of Yaoundé has 310 kilometers square with a 3,500,000 population. The urban community of Yaoundé wants to respect the orientation of the government, which has a national politic of preservation of the forest, and that is a national plan also of adaptation of the climate change. Also, the government has created an observator of the climate change, and the urban community of Yaoundé is following those orientations of the government, but also by putting in place some projects, some green projects in partnership with some investors, lateral or bilateral, with the project of Yaoundé at the heart of the cities that plan to put in place a channel of mountains. You know that Yaoundé has a surname, as a nickname of a city at 7 mountains, because there is a chain of mountains that is around the cities that with a lot and with some big trees. So we have some partners, with the example of the French Agency of the Development, which is supporting us in those activities. Also, we have a lack of coordination between the urban management that is handled by the municipality on the masters of the central government that delivers some documents, mainly the plates in matriculation. Some of those documents are delivered to some particulars on some space that are already reserved to the urban forest. For example, some green spaces that are already reserved that to serve as a green space, which makes it difficult the creation of the preservation of those spaces. And the preservation of the green spaces, the involvement of the population is also very shy as of today. Few people are planting trees inside the concessions, but facing the lack of the water in the housing, the poverty, and the increasing of the urban migration, the population are invading the area reserved for the green spaces, and they also invade the humid zones, and also the level of the mountain. So for facing the destruction of the forest for the agriculture, we planned at the level of Yaoundé to go to the agroforestry to have the agriculture of local subsidiary and the maintenance of the urban community to cultivate, and is also associated with the plantation of trees and also the maintenance while making the agriculture on those spaces. We planned at the level of the town hall of the cities the creation and the realization, in the case of the project Yaoundé Heart of the City, a park of agglomeration with having some places, the construction of equipment, for the creation of those sites, and also the construction of the access way for those construction sites, and the take off some part as well. So it's also planned the restoration and the reforestation also, and also the generalization of the agro-reforestation. So I was saying that he was playing the generalization of agroforestry on the different mountains. This agroforestry is a way of exploitation of the lands while associating the trees and the culture for the to get some products as well. He was also realized an arboretum in the third areas of Yaoundé. This arboretum is for us a type of museum where we only plant some rare forest trees, as the city of Yaoundé used to have before the independence, as the ebon wood and some medical plants back in the day. Also, there is on process one in creation, a canal around the Ifundi River that goes around the city. The construction of this canal is on the way in the different wetland of the wide spaces to obtain an urban forest of a really good extension. The problematic of financing is one of the key difficulty to the implementation as well. So, Mr. Mayor, can you wait for the intervention of the financing, because we're going to have another round on these questions. So sorry for the technical issues. Thank you for those comments that are concerning what the Colonel Major mentioned, the importance of the participation of the local community in the process. Professor Wise, I will ask you the next question. Gabon is one of the most rich countries in forest. Is 48% of the area of the country is covered by forest. So what did you do to develop the economic development with the protection of the forest? And what was the role of the cities in those question of development of the environment? Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. I would like to salute your former colleague, Christian Asukaravanem, my boss. I think that AIMF is his favored organization. She always followed what you do. She really wished that Gabon will be represented this morning with you today. Leo, you scared me when the boss of WRI, the president of the institute, said that we are losing 3 million of hectares in Africa. I made some calculation in my mind, if it's about $10, something that we're going to debate later, it means that we have about $15 billion of waste in the environment every year, which is 4 billions. So we have to find some finance to cover that, because these 15 billion of dollars, we will be obligated to find a way to cover that. Gabon, we are 88% forest in Gabon. We just had a meeting of Stockholm plus 50, and the president Omar Bongo represented Gabon. He committed to take some action, and when he came back to Libreville, he created for the first time a Ministry of Environment, which is 50 years ago. And after Rio, he adopted the first law of environment at Rio plus 10. He created 13 national parks. Also, the actual president, Ali Bongo Ndimba, after Copenhagen, launched a series of politics for the good management of the forest and the fight against the climate change. So we have 5 decades of actions for the environment that was allow Gabon to maintain our rate of deforestation at minus 0.5%. The question now is how continue this effort. So you mentioned that Arnaud said that 10 years of emission at the world level are all comprised in the trees and the soil of Congo. The scientists of JEC told us that we have 8 years to change, to reduce our emission. So if we have 10 years of emission at the level of Congo, we have there is no 1.5 or 3 degrees. Only if the basin of Congo is at the high level. We cannot gain the war against the fight against the climate change without the basin of Congo. So at Gabon, we are aware of that. It's like a moral obligation for us. And I'm looking at my brothers of the Sahel, of Niger, what he just said with passion. We know in Gabon that our forests bring rain to the Sahel. We know that in DRC, the forests bring rain in Ethiopia. It fills the river over there, and it allows the agriculture in Egypt. So the basin of Congo is the heart of the continent of African. If we lose the basin of Congo, we're going to lose this systemic process. We're going to have hundreds of millions of refugees due to climate. We're going to destabilize our continent. Gabon maintained for 50 decades. It's only 3 years that I'm the Minister of the Forest. That is 10 or 12 years ago, the President of the Republic, Ali Bongo Ndimba, made a decision to prohibit the exportation. For 1 century, Gabon did not export. Becoming Minister of the Forest, I dig the forest economies. I designed an economic model. I realized that if our brothers in Cameroon and Congo, if they export logs, they only keep 8% of the value of those logs in Africa. And they also gift 92% of the value to overseas. So we create and employment in Africa for 9 employment in China, in France, and in the US. We inject €1 in our economy for 9 that are injected in China, in Europe, and in the US. So the decision of the president to prohibit this exploitation of the log, to transform the wood in Gabon and go to the third transformation to create furniture, windows and doors, was a decision to multiply by 10 or by 20 the economic forest in Gabon, and also create, which is critical for the cities, between 300 and 500,000 employment in the forest sector. In Gabon, we are 88% forest, and we are 87% in our population. There is probably a revelation there. But what is the biggest challenge for Gabon in the future? We have 2 big challenges. One that is related to the climate. Our economy that is at 60% with oil is going to disappear, because if we have to buy our oil in 20 years and we have to replace this 60% of the economy with something, and we think the forest can help us, but as a lot of countries in Africa, we have a young population, young and urban. So if we cannot create employment for the 800 children that are going to school in Gabon, in 10 or 15 years, we will not be able to maintain the stability of our countries, which has been stable since the independence. So the creation of this employment, based on the export, the sustainable export of the forest, is really critical for the stability of Gabon, but also is the only way to preserve the forest. So we're going to exploit the forest and exploit it on the long term. And all of thanks to our studies and also our master of exploitation, which is selective exploitation. We have 2 trees by hectare. We cut it differently that is done in Europe. We can do that, but in 25 years, rise the augmentation of carbon. We can exploit sustainably, and we can also reduce, and we can also rise the emission of carbon. So this is the experimentation that we are making in Gabon. This is the vision of how we continue those 5 decades of actions up to 2030, 2040, and 2050. And we committed in that way to remain neutral in carbon up to 2050, because we were already successful with the agreement in Paris. Thanks to this forest, we have the country more positive in the world in carbon. We absorb 100 million of totally in France. And we will continue to do so for the Sahel, for Ethiopia, because we absolutely need the forest to continue to play the role for the regulation of our world climate. Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor White, for this observation, encouraging at the end, because you talk about the potential of the forest to become the new oil for a world in which we'll have to fight against the climate change. Thank you very much for this historical background, international, for Gabon. The 88% of the coverage of the forest today are the result of 50 years of politics that supported. I have to go back to you, Governor Vidal. You are a veteran on the environmental. You have a rare overview. I would like to ask you to share the context of your global experience, the evolution of your thoughts. where are we today facing the role the cities? I remember a few years ago, the dominant notions, the environment is what existed of the cities, but I think today there is a different realization vis-a-vis the relationship between the cities and the forest. So I would like you to share your thoughts on the relationship between the cities and the forest.
Let me start by saying something important. We have already tried more than once to recognize the role of forest and to define clear plans and clear goals to recover, to restore, and to give value to forest. We did it through the New York Declaration on Forest. The last time it has been because of the Glasgow Declaration on Forest. But the sad reality it is that in some way we are failing. We have not been able to recover, to restore, and to protect the forest. In most places of the world, the rate of deforestation is growing. In the case of Gabon, it is probably one of those differences. But in most of the world, it is growing, mostly in tropical areas. And it has grown even more because of pandemics, because of people going back to their places, because of the lack of control, as all the focus it was put it into the pandemics and to fight against the pandemic, among some other elements. In some cases, in cases as in Latin America, it is growing even because of domestic, voluntary governmental policies to expand the agricultural and cattle borders. That is the case of Brazil, that is the case of Bolivia. So that is the sad news. So the point is, how can we reverse this situation, and what is the role that cities could play? Let me start by talking about, first, the political process. Also, it is sad the strong difference that exists in between the climate debate and the biodiversity debate. When we see how much the CBD has, the Biodiversity Convention, to be more clear, has progressed in not only defining more clear goals, targets, vision, and implement it, it is really, really strongly behind the climate debate. And one of those reasons, it could be related to our lack of ability of connecting nature, the forest, the biodiversity with the economy. I think that one of those big successes on climate, it has been because of the connection of climate and the economy. And your institution, WRI, has been strongly successful in creating this global commission on climate and the economy. I am all the time wondering why we are not doing the same for nature, why we are not creating a commission that could develop a strong link in between nature and the economy, the forest and the economy. That is, for me, a key element, because if not, the biodiversity, the nature and the forest won't be part of a strong political debate. But that moves me into a second element. What is our political vision for nature? What is what we are expecting to achieve in X years? Because yesterday I told you, if we use the analogy of a solar system, for climate we have a clear main star. No, and what is that main star? No raise temperature in more than 1.5, the net zero, the resilient world, and the decisive decade. Those are the four key elements of that main star. And nobody is doubting about that main star. There could be controversies in how to calculate the net zero, how to balance emission reductions with removals. That's true. But the concept is there. What about nature? Because living in harmony with nature sounds beautiful, but can you measure that? What is that value? What is that equivalent to a net zero for nature? Fortunately, now organizations, as WWF, it is working in the idea of a nature positive concept that for sure deserves more development. We do need to define a more clear vision that can link with the economy and immediately with the political decision-making process. If not, we are going to fail. You cannot align the orbits in this solar system, so you cannot align the actors when there is no clarity on where to go and how to go. That moves me to a third element. It is governance. I am surprised, positively surprised with you, Minister, because of your title. Your title, it is the oceans, the forest, the water, the climate, and I don't know if more, it's like 4 lines in your business card. And that is good because you are integrating in some way what it should be a good governance. In some countries, as in France, I love the idea of ecological transition. Even now in Ecuador, people is talking about the ecological transition ministry. And why ecological transition? Because we're in time of transition. And we do need to connect the environment, the energy, the economy, and the development. That is the only way. It is by bringing in Spain. It is also the Minister of Ecological Transition. It is the 4th Vice President of the country. So look the power of this person that also is a very strong woman and very good friend, Teresa Rivera in Spain. So that is the idea, to start to think in some new ways to organize our public structure in a way that can bring back to the former ministers of the environment the power that deserve to move the ecological transition. So that is an additional element. But also, because of that, we don't need to connect with our plans. We are not connecting our forest effort with the NDCs, the National Determined Contribution, that are the climate plan. And I am sure that if I ask you all, if you know what does it mean, the NBSAPs, I am sure that nobody knows. Because the NBSAPs, it is the equivalent of the NDCs in the Biodiversity Convention. Also, it is the obligation of the Biodiversity Convention to countries to prepare their own plan to define how to address biodiversity loss and recover that biodiversity. And nobody knows what does it mean, an NBSAP. So we do need to connect our forest effort with those domestic plans. 2 more short things. The role of non-state actors. We don't need to convene non-state actors. We don't need to bring investors. We don't need to bring civil society into the table. We don't need to bring indigenous people and to start a dialogue for a better management of forests. And I will leave finance for the next round because I know that you are prepared to ask about finance. But let me add one more thing. Nature-based solutions. That is a key element. Also, that is a key element for cities. And remember, friends, not every plantation initiative, it is nature-based solutions. That is important to be considered. It is not just about planting trees. It is about following the 3 main values of nature-based solutions. That it is to address societal challenge, first value. Second value, to secure biodiversity net gain and ecosystemic integrity. And third, to protect social, or to include social consideration and to protect rights. So those are the 3 elements. Sometimes you can have a beautiful plantation initiative, but probably you could alterate the nature of the ecosystem. That is not nature-based solution. So we have to move our actions more close into the nature-based solutions concept. Fortunately, we have gotten a great political traction by UNEA 5.2 some weeks ago, a couple of months ago in Nairobi. UNEA, for the first time ever, has recognized nature-based solutions formally. And also the UNCCD here in Abidjan has recognized nature-based solutions. So nature-based solutions will be a key element to protect forests, to give value to forests, and to involve or include cities into that management. So those are my first reflections. Lot of things pending, a lot of things to continue working and moving things forward, but as always, we should keep the optimism and also define what is that balance in between nature and climate that we have to exploit. but that will be probably the content in the second question. Thank you, Leo.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. So you all mentioned the question of economical value. Professor White, I was really impressed with your mental arithmetic to identify the cost of the destruction of 3 billion hectares annually in Africa. So I think that it's a sub-evaluation because the markets only see the benefits of the services that give our forest are not reflected in the prices. So the next question that we'll ask you all mentioned about the financing. I will start with you, the Colonel Major. How do you see the potential to finance the conservation of the problem in Côte d'Ivoire? And do you see some possibilities beyond the financing for the participation of the investors, the private investors? Thank you very much. To remember, a reminder, the strategy that was developed at the level of Côte d'Ivoire during the next 10 years will cost 616 billion, which is 1 billion euros. 616 billion of French CFA we have to commit in the Ivorian forest in the 10 years to recover the 10 or 20% in the rate of coverage. How to get back this 616 billion of French CFA? We developed some strategies, mainly with the government. We know that the government will not have the sufficient needs, but we emphasize on the private sector. The private, whether it's national or international, concerning the national private, is mainly the operators in the wood sector at the level of Gabon we mentioned. The operators in the wood sector that exploit and use the forest has to contribute to its restoration. And in this context, we already engage at the same point of the collectivity, some concession. We offer the opportunity to the private to dispose some concession. It's the private operator that will finance the major part, the 90% part of the activity that will be taken in this concept. We engage more than 30 private operators in the finance of some classified forests, and we engage ourselves. And we also have some private of the wood sector. We also have some private in the agricultural sector, which means those that benefit from the cocoa and benefit of the in Côte d'Ivoire. Those moral entities make us some concession to rehabilitate the forest. I was asked the question to know how we can have those different concessions in relations to agriculture. When we say that you have the concession in the gazetted forest, for example, 20 million hectares, we authorize you to practice your agriculture in these 20,000 hectares. But the big condition is to associate the trees. So you and I, we are going to discuss all the density that you have to adopt for the forestal plan. So these are the type of convention that will help us to condense the budget. Outside those agricultural private, we have some international investment. For example, the World Bank is financing a project with us in the Southeast project that they say they will invest 75 billions of French CFA, and we know that we're going to get there, and we estimate that by 2030 we will reach a rate of 20% of our forest. That is really important for the Minister of Forest and the President of the Republic. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, Mr. Tanga, for interrupt you. You were about to tell us about the question of financing. I will ask the question, are you planning a future where Yaoundé will auto-finance the efforts of rehabilitation or reforestation of the forest and the benefits also that will come from that? Thank you. At the level of Yaoundé, the situation is complex. The city of Yaoundé has limits that are in conformity with the Department of Ofundi, the administrative circumscription of Kofundi. And at the level of Yaoundé, there are some spaces considered as relevant of the public domain belonging to the country, to the government, the zone of mountains and the wetlands and some public ways. It's on those different spaces that the town hall of the cities is intervening and has a full mastering. What has been planned on those spaces are done on the basis on proper fund of the urban community of Yaoundé. If we consider that the town hall of the city has a lot of offers to offer, which is the facilities of and the new construction of the cities and the public enlightenment, we can convene all that the resources for the town hall of the city will not be sufficient for the works that are done in downtown and the zone of the mountains that are in the responsibility of the city. So in that aspect, we are exploring the possibility for investments through some partners, with some diverse partners. I mentioned in my intervention the support of the French Agency of Development. I will not mention those that already signaled themselves. So we are continuing to solicit the support of the partners with other spaces of the cities as a rural area, an urban area. In the rural area, they're all part of the territory of the cities. We have families and the land spaces to facilitate them. What we are pushing them to make when we validate a plan of housing of a family on an area, we can require them a type of that they plan some spaces for the so thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So Professor White, so what is your role to unlock the financing? I know you are familiar with the initiative, the CAFI, the initiative for the forests of the Central Africa. You might use that example as a reference in particular. Thank you. I might probably talk about two articles that appear in the national press. The first in Bloomberg. I was interviewed with a journalist of Bloomberg and we talked about carbon credit. We talked about the Gabon forest and I told him that Gabon is finishing the creation with NUCC, the UNFCCC, the creation of 90,000 millions of carbon credit based on our action in the last 20 years. And on Bloomberg, they have a headline when they talk about Gabon, that wanted to seal 300 million of US carbon, that it will be the biggest sale of carbon of the history. And also, I was in the travel, I did not really have the time to read the article. And when I got to Charles de Gaulle, I saw a similar article on Jeune Afrique, the website, where he talked about 285 million of euro of carbon credit. So I called the journalist of Jeune Afrique to say that you mentioned me in an article without talking to me. So you know me, why are you quoting me without talking to me? Why did you take off a zero in my credit? So I understood later that in Bloomberg, we look at the rate, the value of the red credit on the last 10 years. We saw that the red credit is about $1, $2, $3, $4, $5. With coffee, we had an agreement with Norway to pay us $5 the ton for the credit. But the credit in Europe is about 80 euros of ton. And when I look at the credit of Gabon, with this process, with this red process, which for the country is for Brazil, is not for Gabon, is not for Congo, Brazzaville, is for the country with a rate of high deforestation to help them to reduce the deforestation. So for us, it does not work very well. So on the last 10 years, Gabon absorbed from the atmosphere more than 1 billion tons of CO2 in net. Since Copenhagen, 1,250,000,000 of tons of CO2 was absorbed from the atmosphere. And with red mechanism, we're going to create 92 million of tons of credit. So what I told Bloomberg and Jeune Afrique, for each credit, each Gabon credit, Gabon will take 10 tons of CO2 from the atmosphere. So those are the best credit in the world. There is no other carbon credit where you can take 10 tons, where you can take 10 tons of CO2 from the atmosphere to get only one credit. And now in the last 20 years, our population of the elephant of forest go to 60,000 to 90,000. So we lost 75% of elephant of the forest in the world, but in Gabon we have 50% more. It's more expensive for us in conflict of elephants, but our carbon credit are nature plus, nature plus plus. We created 13 national parks, 6 reserves, 2 sites of marine that are protected. We have 22% of protected soil, 22% of our ocean that are protected all during this period. So our carbon credit is not the best value for money because it's 10 for the price of 1, but also is positive. The nature-based solutions are related. We cannot really put a value of the biodiversity. This is the big challenge for us. It's probably because the UNFCCC is negotiating strongly because there is a carbon molecule. We can put a value on one molecule of carbon, but we cannot compare our value on the Gabon forest with in France as well. We don't know how the carbon credit cannot be calculated. We have to start giving a real value. If we want to help Côte d'Ivoire to do a little bit like Costa Rica, who destroy its forest and rebuild. If we want to help Sierra Leone, where all the rivers cannot flow because we cut the forest, if we have to up them to reforest, we have to give a real value of forest. We have to make that decision that in $30, we're going to replant West Africa. We're going to replant the Sahel. We're going to restore the rain, and we will have a carbon economy that will help us to reput the forests almost everywhere in our country that were deforested, that lost the forest. Thank you, Professor White. Let's talk of the financing for the biodiversity. Mr. Boulevard Vidal, you are in a good position to talk about that. It's probably a philosophical question. Can you see the potential of the market, seeing the problems that the Professor White meant to make the accounting the value of biodiversity? Do you think about the potential of the market to unlock the financing at the necessary scale to protect the financing of the protection of the biodiversity? Oui, je peux le voir, mais...
Because probably some of you went to Glasgow to the COP26, and there were different audience. There were some people saying to the audience, no offsets. And even a full page of the Financial Times saying no offsets during the COP26. This was in charge of some organization that paid that Financial Times page. But more than that, the UN Secretary General, in a couple of speeches, mentioned the credibility gap. So he talked about some lack of credibility in this kind of system. So the point is that if we are not able to sort those critics, it will be very difficult to dynamize those markets. So let me go step by step in a short intervention. For sure, we have the demand side and the supply side. Let's start with the supply side, who are providing the carbon, who are putting the carbon in the market, because in some way, Professor Lee has just mentioned some elements that we have to develop to be active in those markets. Because we are most of the time talking about the jurisdictional approach, no? That we do need to develop a jurisdictional approach. Yeah, that's good, but that means that you have to be ready. And to be ready means that as a government, you have a lot of things to do. To start, you have to define your baseline. What is your stock of carbon? No? And how much else carbon you can capture? Because if you don't have a clear baseline, you don't know what you are putting in the market. And let's bring the example of Brazil. Brazil is in a tipping point. Brazil in South America has not more ability to be a sink. It is a source of emission. So the point is, what is your reality? It is true that we have this lung of the world, or it is becoming the opposite. It is more a source than a sink. So that is one element. But also, how are you planning to nested the project? It is by a jurisdiction or project by project. And what is the role that the government will play? Because you have to avoid carbon cowboys. You have to avoid to have people who are trying to take advantage of the system as a way to have you counting well. And also because you have to fulfill with your NDC. So that is something that also it is important in the supply side. But let's go quickly into the demand side. So who could claim that it is net zero because it is offsetting their emissions? And that is the $1 million question. Because the principle of the climate debate is not to create ways to avoid any corporation or any demander to divest their main obligation, that it is for real and absolute emission reduction in their value chain. So that is why the importance of pushing companies to do that in their value chain, for after that go beyond the value chain. But the point again, it is how can you force that to companies that are hard to abate? Aviation, shipping, steel, cement. No, that is like the most difficult piece of this equation. So the point it is that to those that are not the hard to abate sectors, we have to see well how much they are fulfilling with the net zero standard. WRI, WWF, among some others, we are part of the Science-Based Target Initiative, and we are working on that. What are those we scope, how to fulfill with the net zero, and what is that percentage that it could go beyond the value chain? So we do need to have clarity on that. But it is not just to have SBTI. Also, it is how can we make more mandatory to have corporations joining the SBTI, and how can we track progress? So there are still many pending things to recover that credibility. And let me finish, because I know that we are running out of time, that also we have to be clear that not every intervention on nature, it is about markets. I think that that is creating confusion. Nature-based solutions doesn't mean equal markets. You can have a nature-based solution that it is non-tradable, perfectly. So people is confusing terms. So the point is that we do need to recover that credibility. We do need to give clarity to the concept, and we do need to be enough clear to point at those corporations that are not fulfilling to reduce emissions. So the market, it is a flexible mechanism, no? To go beyond your own obligation that it is for real reduction by a transformational change in your own technologies. That is why there is all this sensitive atmosphere around the carbon market that I hope we can sort it soon. Let me finish by saying many organizations, fortunately, are working on that. The Voluntary Carbon Markets Integrity Initiative, VCMI, has just released for consultation a claim guidance, no? That it is defining when a claim, it is a credible one, and it is a high quality one. In case of nature-based solutions, IUCN, a couple of years ago, released a good standard to secure high quality interventions on NBS. So my recommendation to the audience, it is to follow those processes that are trying to secure high quality interventions, high integrity, that are two main concepts to recover that credibility. Thank you.
Merci Emmanuel. C'est un sujet qui mérite un colloque tout un...
Thank you for bringing a concise and important response to that. We are mostly toward the end of the panel. So in 3 words, what would be for you the success at the COP27 in Egypt? Okay, so what are your expectations that may help this restoration rehabilitation of forest Jacinta? So I will do a light round so quickly, just 1 or 2 words about your expectation. Mr. Emmanuel Pekedigal, I will ask you for a reflection on that, since you have a particular position for having been the president of the COP20, if I'm not mistaken. So I will allow you to share your experience and your expectation for COP27, and after I will give the floor to Mr. Ngata. So let us start with you, Mr. Colonel Major. So let us start with you. Our expectation for those cities to to commit themselves in restoration, we should have formal convention between the government and those communities, for those communities to participate into the restoration of forests in Cote d'Ivoire. You talk about the National Park of Banco, and long ago that forest up now has been protected. Is not under the leadership of the Minister of Water and Forests, is the one of the environment. But if that forest were not protected, the same way we are facing landslide, we would have noticed the same thing for that forest. So that forest is, how we say, the core of Abidjan. So we don't have to leave it behind by going on the that highway, another highway. We have another forest there with 17 drilling of the water distribution company. So if that forest disappear, I'm telling you, the population of Yopougon will suffer for that. So I will suggest that we follow Sweden. The community should be embedded. You see, when you are in Stockholm, when you have to kill a tree, you should have the approval of the Service of Water and Forest, and you should have the authorizations of the community and the mayor before you be allowed to kill that tree. So let us go meet ourselves for city to live better. I think we are on time, and then thank you for having given a stock of the situation and also leaving us with hope, with concrete and solution. Thank you for all of you. I'm handing over the mic to you. Unfortunately, we have to shorten it because it's now the closing ceremony of this event that will be presided over by the mayor of Paris. So we see, I thank you, and we will see the solution at local, international level. Thank you for that. All those questions related to funding. So we thank also the honorable minister. We have the possibility, the opportunity to go and visit one of their forests the afternoon. I encourage you to just massively come. So I will also commend the mayor of Paris for trusting me, and for the initiative of Paris on Forest. She accepted it, and I was thinking of like she wanted to build forest in Paris, and I even didn't know how she would have go about that, and she explained to me. Then from then I had that idea of having this conference. So I would like to commend and thank her, and I would like to thank the permanent secretary of AIMF who will be there to assist on that initiative on forest, and my colleague in Paris, and the ECO. So that's initiative of Paris on forest, and I hope they will be doing it in Asia, which is the third, I would say, length of the planet. So thank you to all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to the attendees of this initiative of Paris on the protections of forests and biodiversity. We are now going to start the closing session. So I do thank Roland Latin, the senator, co-founder of Climate Check, one of the partners of this event. I'm inviting him to join us here right after the photo, whatever, right after the picture, right after we snap the picture. Thank you.
Hello, sound check. Can you hear me? Perfect.
Oui, oui.
Hello. Can you hear me? Sound check.
Mais là,
Alors, est-ce qu'on a un micro qui marche?
Sound check. Sound check.
Bien.
Good. We're going to start this. We're going to start this last round on Dead in Time. Yes, I am honored to have the responsibility to moderate this last part of that summit. Thank you, Anita Gold. Thank you for having allowed me to do that. Just to say, with my experience,
Négociation internationale avec Anne Hidalgo, on a tout.
With Anne Hidalgo, both of us, we presided over commissions many years back. Just to say that that COP of cities is an important time for international negotiation. For many years, I was the spokesperson of Climate CGO, and then we fought for cities and regions to be recognized in international bodies. It was a difficult fight, and it was also a failure in recognizing the role of the authorities, but the coming here were able to get some mentions of the key roles of local authorities in the international negotiation. So Copenhagen, and after that we went up to Paris without any effort. During that 2015 years, that was just closing with the COP21 with climate change. It was with our partner Bernard Chouda, and then we carried out that climate event in Lyon, and we committed on our 17 billions of carbon tons, and that was so in that framework of after that COP21, we came out of there with an agreement which remains an operational one, even if there is a delay in its enforcement. So despite all, the architect of the agreement of Paris remains a key one and is still usable, and we have in the agenda, just to recall, we commit local authorities in many concrete actions. So we did it in Paris, and amongst the different events that we carried out in Paris, deeply participated into. And we are still making progress, because for 15 years we succeeded in committed authorities, and we also have the first official dialogue in the COP with non-governmental and governmental authorities were associated at the same level to discuss together. And unfortunately, we saw that numbers of countries didn't want to have a strong recognition of non-state actors, and then behind that recognition we talk about access to funding. And I think the event of Abidjan and the one of Paris, it is a very important event. It is about relaunching our advocacy to call for the attention of our national authorities, just to say that if we don't do anything, then we will not be able to reach our goal, which is mitigating the reducing the emission. So for what we know about the warming, I think it is an important time that for us to just do the advocacy. We will do it also in October in Dakar, and you are all invited. So we will have a summer check during the COP and the upcoming COP also on biodiversity, because Emmanuel Baudouin knows it more than the others, and he also talked about the link climate, biodiversity. The forest is an example, and we're going to bring to the COP in Montreal. And since we know that in the upcoming COP, the coming COP will talk about biodiversity, so we have the international agenda starting here with this agenda, and we will have to continue with non-state, events. So we are in such a framework now, and at that time, the ambassador in France, and that growth of non-state action, I know how much she's convinced. We had Lawrence, who is a moderator of the action. So in Paris, we had many testimonies. So before I hand over the word to Laurence Kuvianada for us to hear a message. I'm sorry not to be with you today to this summit. This summit in Abidjan, for me, it is the result of all the effort that we did in Paris in 2015. And we, as the negotiator of this agreement, we show that with the government, the companies, is also about the financial sector, and those communities which should rely upon to get transformation. This is what the fight against climate change is requiring for us. And for me, there is a link between 2015 and today in Abidjan. It's because the cities committed themselves into this. It's because they are working in the political space where citizens can organize themselves, bring innovation, reflect together, and then find the solution for society to move. It's because also the citizens in the cities are able to work together and with the communities, and then to also show that they are willing to move ahead, and for them to continue with the development model pattern. And we see it with famine. We see that impact of drought and sometimes floods with the increase of international costs. So I think that the cities, and Abidjan particularly, it is the time to show there is a citizen, there is a solidarity between citizens. And beyond that, when we see such situation of crisis, after hard years of COVID, which does not end it here, is also that citizen solidarity that I think is the value that mayor of cities should embrace. I think it is key to have that citizens dimension. And I think the key important aspect of this change that we should generate upon. And I do think that all here, by following the ambitions of all the cities, that will be about food, that will be about energy, transportation, solidarity toward the less favored one. It's just to show that those cities we have to fight against climate change, and all the commitment, all the engagement has to be kept. This is the way to get the government accountable, the investors as well, to say to the investor, come and invest with us in our countries, in our places. That's through that we can get change. So I wish you a successful summit. Thank you to Laurent Toubiana, who we were also actors following what were carried out in that COP 2021. She was one of the key actors, and to recognize the non-state actors of companies and financial system and territory community. So this challenge, Trust German has been following for many years. I'm not going to count the years. And Francois Janin is a climate governance specialist, which talk about in a couple of minutes, is director of observatory and at also Sciences Po. So Francois Chunak, you have 5 minutes, only 5 minutes to just show the perspective of this COP of cities. And let us not forget the war in Ukraine and the food challenges that will be impacted Africa. So we have a multilateral world which is fragile now, and we know that this multilateralism is one of the keys of the responses in the climate. And we need international actors, and also on the cost of carbon. You say all the things put together. So we are, have to talk about that multilateral and the impact of the war in Ukraine. And we have migratory challenges. And despite all, in this destabilized context, we have to maintain multilateralism. So you have 5 minutes just to say something about those different questions. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the floor for that closing session. I would like to start with a question that people ask to me most of the time in conferences. It's to know if I am optimistic or pessimistic about the future of the fight against climate change. Look, we should not lie to ourselves. Look, when I look at the level, the actions of the government, where many objective goals are not reached, with many governments that are going backwards. You see, even the one on Supreme Court in the UN, in America, I see many ministers, they have good will. They want to do things, but they are prisoners of contradictory interests. And when we try to satisfy everybody in politics, we see we don't take any good direction. And when we're trying to meet the need of all the people, at the end of the day, climate we lose. So in such contests, those cops that are most of the time recording chambers of the actions of government turn to a machine for disappointment, because at the end of the day, they don't have anything to give. And they are prisoner of a rule, which is the rule of consciousness. In COP, we don't vote, and all the decisions are taken. It's like you are giving a blocker driver to the government. If you are ambitious enough on climate nation, you are condemned to always be disappointed by the final COP test. But contrary, when I see what happened in the companies and in the communities and in the cities, I am optimistic because I see things moving ahead in the cities. The same time in terms of mitigations of green gas emission, and also is important for adaptation to the impact of climate change, and also because the cities, on the contrary to the government, they are in the approach which is different from the competitiveness, and we can see it in those couple of cities, or all those that organizes and put together the elected authorities, the national elected authorities, the international one. For us to be realistic, we should accept all those constraints due to climate change, and the goal today is to mitigate the heat, and for us not to backslide and just be at the same level of the climate that we experience in the 20th century. So our challenge today in terms of climate is to be able to rule and go against what is not doable as difficult, and we will not be able to reach our goal with the same bodies, with the same institution which brought forth the problem. Nevertheless, that's what happened at each COP, and we say it is the COP of the last change, but unfortunately we say at the end of the day this very one will save the climate. But unfortunately, that redundancy creates a feeling of loss of hope, and it gives us the feeling in this sense that nothing is being progressed and nothing is going ahead, like everything is stuck. And that's the reality, that the government, they don't do anything to move ahead with the goals who sometimes topic go beyond the life experiences. Meanwhile, that climate change is progressively moving ahead in those cities we know, and we saw it during that summit. Things are moving ahead, things are improving every month, every week, every single day. Cities know how to do, but they have to now know how to make it known. This is key, because in such a way that climate change cannot be addressed, but in such century we are in some way forced and condemned to put in place collective action mechanism and multilateralism. So after COP26, we have this year COP27, COP32, COP50, and so on. We will not continue, we can't continue that way. If not, those COPs will stand for pretext, for excuse. But this year, we find in COP27, what can we expect from that conference when we see the war in Ukraine? We may put aside Russia to the football World Cup, but we'll not be able to exclude Russia on negotiation on climate issue, and we will not be able to be sitting aside of the Russia delegate and behave as if nothing happened. But we are running the risk to see international tension that may jeopardize this action being carried out up to now. So I think there is an emergency to recover that multilateralism, and only one way to go about that, to get it open it up to other actors and embed cities with other partners to be in line on that cooperation idea. And I do think that's the only one condition for COP to become the driver of the climate actions and not slowing down as it has always been. Thank you 1,000 times. Thank you. Thank you, Francois. And I think you respected the allocated time, and
that will be the first closing ceremony, which
abide by
the allocated time.
Thank you to Francois showing us this perspective, which is about bringing about the cities and the non-state actors at the core of this action and activity. It's about finding the balance between the involvement of COP and multilateral framework, which will not move anyhow. And to be able to reach and take up this challenge, we're going to go about advocacy. We're going to have advocacy. Let me call the last 7 speakers. We have the mayor, the governor of the region of Abidjan, and Ridengo, to come to the stage under your applause as they are getting their different seats to start this last session. Thank you. There is no given order. You are 7 and 7 seats, so we should go. We should reach it without any serious problem or difficulty. To go about that, I will hand over the floor to the mayor of Traku, will be the special envoy. She will be the rep of local government in this COP, so she will speak on some cases on behalf of all the territorial communities, and this is a role I do know, and I think we have to insist on that symbol, the abilities of the union and cooperation for long. The whole territorial communities have always speaks on only one and single voice, and you have the AMF and the list of the different bodies, and we also on the worldwide, we have always been able to have that, single word. It's Shaman, the mayor of Trade, will be in charge of elaborating upon that. I will hand over the floor to her, and we check that the video was perfect. It works perfect for her to just give a priority, the collective word that she will be voicing out. Thank you so much.
My name is Sharon Dijksma. I'm the mayor of Utrecht. Utrecht is the 4th largest city in the Netherlands, and I have been a minister for the environment. And in that position, I was able, on behalf of the European Union, to negotiate on the Paris Agreement. And I think that I already knew at that time that national governments are not capable to bring Paris home, so to say, in their own. So they need multi-level working together with local governments and municipalities. And that is really necessary to be much more effective. My experience is that worldwide, most cities are very progressive and also eager to fulfill the Paris Agreement and to really make the difference. And if you look now at the situation where IPCC is telling us that we're not even close at our targets, but drifting away from them, I think it is really necessary to find a game changer. And therefore, I hope that the COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh could be that game changer. As a special envoy on behalf of the local governments and municipal authorities, I'm at this moment in discussion together with the help of UN Habitat and ICLEI, to discuss with the Egyptian presidency on organizing a ministerial on urbanization and climate change. Because I really hope that after COP27, cities and their contributions, for instance, will be much more at the heart of the national determined contributions of the national governments. And I think that when we cooperate more, that we would be much more effective. So I am discussing with ministers all over the world to make this really possible, that actually the COP27 would be marked as the beginning of a so-called second phase of the Paris Agreement. And we see that Africa, the hosting continent, is the world's fast-growing continent, and they have a unique opportunity to demonstrate that multi-level and cooperative action will be one of the strongest elements of this second phase of the Paris Agreement, by incorporating all levels of governments as a part and parcel of the delivery of all national and global commitments and action. So I hope that we will have in Sharm el-Sheikh a really fruitful conversation between all these levels, and that we will have the first ever climate and urbanization ministerial at COP27, including convening the largest ever multi-level action pavilion at COP27 in the blue zone. That is something that I will be working on and emphasizing on, and I surely hope that all of you who are watching now would support me in doing so, and that there will be a lot of ministers attending and a lot of mayors attending, and that we bring Paris really home, because we're nowhere near yet where we should be. Thank you very much, and warm greetings from Utrecht.
Thank you, Sharon Dijksma, and thank you to underline this very important point, with to integrate in the national determined contribution the role of local government. Il est clair que si dans un certain nombre de...
It's crystal clear that if after such, topic, we have this that should be embedded all the cities and the territory communities action, then we will be able to get more ambitious national contributions, and behind that we will have a positive outcome. For sure, it is the commitment of all the actors that will result in successful and help the different communities and territory to work successfully. So 5 mere statements to illustrate that declaration, that advocacy of Abidjan that we will soon present. I will start with Dominique Olivier, the President of the Executive Council of Montreal, in charge of urbanism issue and aspect. It's quite clear that we also have not to leave behind the daily life of our communities. And so in terms of climate aspect, Dominique Olivier, maybe just one message on the capacities of cities to mitigate and reduce their level of greenhouse gas emissions. So dear colleague, I am not teaching you anything if I'm saying that the cities in the decade to come, we have significant growth of more than 15% by 2050. It is then appropriate and key to think in a climate change context, to rethink our relation between us and the nature, when we also have to think of equity and then social cohesion. And so the cities and the administration should think of an optimal organization, but then for the eco perspective, as we saw during our work, we should also have an economic approach tackling employment aspects, and then also help out and think of green space. And then we all are knowledgeable about that, and this has become a necessity. And this current model is out of fashion, and we have to think of a new way of living, of moving, of traveling, in order to be aligned with sustainable development. In Quebec, we say we have to dare, and we have to dare, even if the measures are not always are not always accepted by all. But we have to think, we have to act by thinking of future generation. This should be done by calling upon this collective emergency, by embedding the different actors and stakeholders in order to move for change and decide together. That's how I may say the Corp of Cities demonstrated very well. So we should go about it by keeping everything, fostering the good relationship between the different actors. I will be closing by recalling that the impact of the decision that we have at the national level can will be seen at the international level, and more people have to move their living place because of all the harmful their places may be. So if you could give us one of the last mission at the end of work, that would be to urge all of us to be in an emergency atmosphere in order to create such an environment carbonless, for us to have new economic model for a Pacific society and a society with solidarity. Thank you for this message and the relationship between us and then the social, impact, which is the responsibility of the local authorities. Also highlight that Canada will be hosting the COP for biodiversity, and we can also make the link between the social gaps and the biodiversity when we go toward a more inclusive COP. And I know there in Quebec you are attentive to that item, that aspect. You insisted also on the urban issues and the extension of cities. Maintenant,
I think you speak in English, because it's very important to have this exchange between the different cities about their initiative. It's very important to enforce the cooperation between the cities, and I know that for you, Mayor Erevan, is very important.
Thank you. I highly appreciate this opportunity for open discussion, creation of a platform for exchange of experience and knowledge, and implementation of joint projects aimed at responding to the new challenges. In the context of continuous urbanizations, special importance is attached to optimal development of urban area, upgrading as well as the imperative of our time, especially in the light of the current global climate change, and to address them, financial resources, relevant skills and capacity are required. In view of the goals and objectives set out in the Paris Agreement, which was ratified by the Republic of Armenia in 2018, as well as building on the results achievement so far, we are committed to focus our efforts on successful implementation, transforming the undertaken obligation into actions and translating the basic concepts of the summit into a special solution in this field. COP27 will offer an inclusive platform providing an opportunity to highlight these special needs on a global as well as local level. All participants countries must achieve the balance between the need to combat climate changes and promotion of economical development. And rather than act tomorrow, the cities of the world gathering in the Abidjan are committed to act today by accelerating the implementation of their climate plans and develop more effective strategies to adapt to the consequences of global warming. By pursuing the active sharing of knowledge and the best practice between cities within their international network, by accelerating their decentralization cooperations within the framework of the twinning arrangement, the friendship agreements, or via the networks of which they are members. It ensures that they are fully consistent with the Paris Agreement and that all funded projects deliver climate co-benefits. I would like to extend my gratitude to the organizers for all their efforts and having this wonderful and motivating event, as well as for the new opportunity of cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. About this question of platform, maybe just an information, an advocacy pro domo. Sur le site Climate Change.
On the website Climate Change, we have a mapping on all the action carried out, where all of us could post, the actions we are just calling for contribution before the summit that will be done in Dakar. So we want the French to be seen the same way as the English, because most of the time that's not the case. In most countries in Africa, the French remain the working language. So yeah, we were talking about the urban extension, and today in all those questions that are redundant, and we have to feed those population living in those cities from agriculture, and those problems there are not different from one continent to another one. It's not peculiar to Africa. So these are the same situation happening everywhere. That's a question, that's dialogue aspect between the cities and the other rural areas is on the table. And I think for the mayor of Kloto, who is the president of Comesesa, which is an important initiative also, by the EU, there's a dialogue corporations of assistance and support of Africa cities. And I think for you, it is something key. Thank you. It's true. All along this event, we heard different rep talking about the challenges in the different cities. Our cities sense already the impact of climate change, and the consequence may increase in the future. Besides, we have to face the significant growth of the population. So those challenges of climate change and urbanizations are tremendous, and I do believe that the future of our society will be in phase. So our life can be the driver of transformation, to have such a place with less greenhouse gas emission, for us to have access, for all of us to have access to energy. African cities signatory of the SCOP by committing themselves in implementing actions to have access to sustainable energy. So those cities try to solve their way this problem of climate change towards a resilient, climate resilient future, less carbon and enable access to sustainable and viable energy. So, but there is a question there. Why or who are we planning it for? This question remains there. We should take good step in terms of climate, energy, to guarantee an inclusive and eco development, leaving nobody behind, and which embed all the different concerns and the solutions suggested by rural young people to ensure resilience, food security. We should also make people voice, children voice, women voice, and vulnerable population heard. Who are the first impacted by climate change on the continent of Africa? For them to come out with solution that will be profitable for them, but for the whole society. We should also draw all of us attention on the circular economy, which remain and constitute a fighting factor to face climate change, and also by limiting the spoiling of resources and waste production. I do believe that the future of Africa is in its cities. The local authorities remain the key driver of the climate change that we need. The mayors should take ownership of the climate. Thank you.
Voilà en tout cas une...
This is a roadmap, very complete roadmap to apply in our authorities. The representative of the New Orleans just had that sentence, which is summarizing parts of our concern. I think for all the elected authority, this question is central. We need some funding to carry out those actions, find balances with international negotiation, which is complex but remain important. We have to find new bridge with national government, national authorities, and we know in Africa funding of the local government remain a complex issue. So I am handing over now the floor to Ruben Ruiza, the mayor of Kigali, who is deeply there and show in the advocacy of Abidjan how important it is to have international framework, but also new discussion, new dialogue with the different states, and how the cities are assisted and supported in their action, and also budget transfer, which is a wide matter, just in a couple of minutes.
Can you all hear me? Thank you very much. 15 years ago, or 10 years ago, the Rwanda government banned the use of plastic bags, and 10 years ago, the government introduced a policy of replantation that would be the lung of the region, is to try to create a safe environment and green and in the whole territory. There are 10 years ago that the government has a policy of reduction of the emission of carbon, greenhouse gases, and all that is an experiment. It was done in the city of Kigali, and you can hear that that couldn't be possible if the city had assistance from the government while putting the means at the political level, but also while putting some direct investments at the level of the budget of the cities that is mine, the city of Kigali, but also at the secondary cities, satellite cities that are all working in the capital at the level of the development of the country. So today we have recently introduced the construction of some ways for cycling, for the bicycles, the construction as well of areas for the people for green side. We started to taking off the market progressively. The one usage, all that has a cost and needs a direct assistance. We cannot be alone as municipality for the implementation for us that are in the development between the central government and the population. We have this assistance. I would like to share this experience to tell you that it's time that all the actions that we are talking about today will be possible, that the government will pursue. The professor just mentioned that the cities are capable. The cities can take actions, but cities can only do that if they have this support by the central government. So it's time today that the government builds with the local authorities that they can rely this development and the implementation of the new contribution that are determined today, and we can all agree onto that and get into this, since the convention of the Chadjment, which is a important convention, but today we see that there are still some resistance. Some are still thinking about joining the adoption of the climate change, which by signing some agreements, I want to highlight that the inherent cost of not doing anything is really expensive in comparison to what we can do if we try, if without this budget support direct to our municipalities. To conclude, I will go back. It's important for our government to recognize necessarily the major role that we play, us that we are close to our community, is very important in the implementation of a economical development plan, especially today. Some concrete action for the adaptation of the climate change. We have to take action. We're going to take action, and it has to be collective, and it has to be progressive. We really to feel we want the presence of our government. I share our experience in Rwanda. We have the central government that is supporting us. We have the community, the population that is really participative. Is very important also is the private sector that is also putting the resources. So that is very good. So thank you very much. Thank you for this clear message, this message that is dedicated to the government in Africa and other ways. Do not fear. Our cities is an asset. The dynamism is there to allow the national politics, and the risk might be weakened tomorrow. It's a big economy for tomorrow. So the power of the cities, and Hidalgo knows a lot of that. The network of collectivity, this world power exists. because the cities, it's an important part of the humanity which is represented through Europe. The authorities, for being here in the sense of this meeting of Abidjan, is to put them at the service of an advocacy and action, included bring the national government, we mentioned that, but we need some international investment, the whole finance sector to help those territories to act. So this is a power that is all about the remobilize in its advocacy movement, is not in contradiction, that they can also give the example with their own contribution that is decentralized to have a world mechanism of solidarity. So I will give the floor to Maxime Prévost, the mayor of Namur, to ask them if today we can move this world to bring more investments, and with our own cooperation bring some example of this world with solidarity that we can do. So thank you very much. We cannot, but we must. What was mentioned this morning is really clear in the question to know that what will be the proposition that the member of the panel will form to create the capacity against the fight against the climate change. We really clear that we need more investments. Of course, we need the resources, but the money will not fix all the problem. So that can fix everything. So the money is not fixed, is not going to fix everything, because the first transition that we have to implement, we all know, is mainly the transition of the mentalities, a change of culture, aiming to consider the rigorous action for men and political women not as a restriction, but as a theme in the time that is to follow the tendency, but a real obligation and a necessity and opportunity to have a challenge of civilization at the 4 areas of the planet. Because for the climate change is to look, do not forget, to save the humanity, to save our humanity, and also, nevertheless, sometimes we forget, sometimes to bring at the economical level, this is the essence. We refuse to reduce the nature, the whole combination of resources that are exploitable, the exploitation, the massive exploitation of fossil energy, which is responsible of the climate, the global warming, that is more production of CO2 that it used to be in 1950. That we know that when we do that, that it was recalled by the professor, a high temperature by 30 years. This region of the globe will be touched by a lack of food, the disappearance of biodiversity, which mentioned forest, a lot of chronicles, some floodings. Abidjan was had the sad experience recently of floodings, and also the migration of millions of people towards the urban cities. So today a lot of plastic waste are being dumped in the oceans, and with this rhythm we will have more plastic than fish in the sea in 2050. So it's up to the decision-making people at the powers and the big institution to talk about the possibilities of a disaster and catastrophe. Today, finally, only the naive will think about working as before. We have to rethink about our conception of progress. We have to think about our new vision for the society to face the fossil energy and guarantee the indispensable social cohesion that is very essential, because the challenge of the climate is also a social climate, and not only for the society. Our generation wants, ladies and gentlemen, they want to be making possible the better and not the denial that generate the worst. So this is about taking care of the nature, a nature that belongs to us to cultivate, to get some fruit and not to destroy and drug the nature. If it's not questioned to abandon all ideas of progress, we have to adapt our ways and mode of production. We have to advance in a pragmatic way by informing, educating, but also acting, make concrete actions, and not only talking and analyzing, but also wording. And in order to do that, we're gonna need some means, financial resources. And the last word of our first COP of cities in Abidjan, the advocacy that we would like to make is to call the members countries of the OECD to rise significantly for a sustainable development, for the development, a funding for the development of the climate, to reinforce the action of the planification and support the efforts to improve the direct access to the cities, to the new program of financing, and not only to just be working, but to act. Also for the development bank and the central bank to facilitate the direct access to financing of the biodiversity climate project of the cities, and to also invest in all the different social languages for the nation, for the United Nations, is also for the notions that was adopted in the Montreal city to habilitate the French language and make usage of it. So also is about the climate investors will bring more financing for the cities for the implementation to improve the receiving and welcoming integration and the integration of the climate migrators, and to reduce the climate risk, to develop the movement of this population to urban cities, because do not forget that we know that in years to come there will be a migrating flow due to climate, more and more that will move the society, our population, with a risk to have some social tension, politics to go back with some extremists and some people with the population. And it is the 4 areas of the European countries and beyond that. The countries of the north and the big international investors should, this is our request, to rise the financial contributors to the south and the most vulnerable countries, that, dear friends, that we might be able to be heard at this advocacy, and this is our wish that I would like to share that. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you for all the mayors, for the elected, for this clear message that show the vision of the community between the mayors, no matter what continent they come from. We're not gonna stay in the book of record as we finish the first summit in times and hour. We have some few minutes late, but despite all the speeches were concise and important, it's time to start with the conclusion of this summit with the speeches of Robert Begré-Mangué and Anne Hidalgo around the advocacy of the cities, the Manifest for the Climate of Abidjan, which will be available on the website www.abidjan2022 very quickly. So I will propose Robert Begré-Mangué to come here to deliver his speech of closing. I'm really happy to invite him and meet him again, because the first Climate Change Africa was held in Abidjan with the region of Abidjan, and we have the occasion to work closely. So I'm really happy to meet him again for his own speech of closure of this summit that is very important. Madam, Mrs. the President, dear friends, which came from all 4 corners of the world, what can we say at the end of these works? The first lesson that we learned is that the mobilization was total. And we notice with pleasure that the rate of participation of the congressmen to the different work sessions was really high. And this proves the interest of each and everyone for this moment of thoughts and reflection, because the challenges are really high. I would like, by concluding of this meeting, propose that we will get as lesson this action. The first action is to establish a climate plan for all cities of the world, particularly the Francophone countries. The second action is to establish some areas with the investors to structure financial mode which are adaptable and easy to the different restriction of management of infrastructure related to the fight against the climate change. The third action is to prioritize the circular economy to optimize the consumption and the transformation of our first material. The fourth action is to establish a board of comparison between the announcements which are done in the international conference and the realization that effective for the expectation of those that need support of the international community. The fifth is to consolidate the action with success in the different countries to duplicate after adaptation at the local plan, because the parameters that allow to establish in a country an action that is successful might be slightly different than those that we can take into consideration at the local plan that concerns us. The sixth action is to engage a federation of responsibility by opening a collaboration with all the social entities, mainly the GNOs, the traditional chiefs, the local publics, the public powers, the local powers, that it will be a federation of consultation to cover the maximum local areas. And the last action, we need to explain and re-explain the real difficulties that we are exposing ourselves by acting against the balance of the nature and bringing a favorism of the disaster of the climate. If we don't do that, we will always be in the mistake part. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Last intervention between the family picture and the signature of this declaration of Abidjan by Anne Hidalgo, Mayor of Paris, President of AM, that wanted this scope, that wanted this return of the cities in the advocacy of international. I would like to thank her before giving her the floor as President of Climate Change, because a few minutes ago we signed with AMF, with Anne Hidalgo, a convention of an observator of action, climate action and real action, not only commitment, but to really see what is happening on the field. Well, I know that there will be more COP. I think we will have the occasion and the pleasure to present the result of the work of this observation, which is not solely a theoretical advocacy, but the reality of the action, which we know that is extremely important on the field. So, Anne Hidalgo, thank you very much, Roland. Thank you for your commitment in the first COP of the cities. Really, I would like to thank all the participants, because you all came. It was the first time. You undoubtedly, as me, felt the need to put the cities back in the heart of the process of the world governance on the climate, because we can see that we act, we do a lot of things, we look for ways, the cooperation, but sometimes we are stopped, and we say that if we meet, if we have more support of the government, if we have more relationship with the different decision-making people of the international organization, maybe things will go quickly, because we see every day as mayor that is obvious. The climate change is really affecting our cities around the planet. Is not a theoretical subject. The question, for example, of the climate refugees is not a theoretical question. It's a question that exists. So it's not; those are not subjects that we invent just for concerns or for duty of anticipation, because it's the role of the responsible to prevent and anticipate by surrounding with scientists that I would like to thank as well, because they were here. Francois just mentioned we need to rethink the process of COP, that today those mechanisms to produce a lot of desperation, the pessimism. Finally, we were really desperate, where we were talking about Laurence Touriania, and we know a commitment, we know a determination and an energy, and we were all really desperate, thinking what is going to happen after that, because this will produce meeting is good, meeting and discuss is good, but it doesn't produce mainly action and determine efficiently massive around a subject that is common to the whole planet about the climate change and its consequences. So I would like to thank all the mayors and the elected, all the partners, the youth as well. I'm really happy that the young activists came and tell us that they're not going to live like us, that we knew already, that to let us know that they will not just sit and let us make decisions that will be decisions that will not take into consideration their future. And they are right to tell us, because they're really right to say that. I find those initiatives, including this advocacy and this treaty of non-proliferation of the fossil energy that Paris mainly joined, I think that this initiative is extremely important, because it's not an initiative that comes to give you a lesson or to assign you something, but it's an initiative that brings a method to go through something different. The Minister of Gabon said it very well, that the political decision, there was a clear choice that finally substitute the fossil energy and the economical effect on your country with this virtual exploitation of the forest, not an exploitation that will bring to dissolve this resource, but in contrary to help the population to live locally. So we are all united and gathered here with this energy. So what we did after this Congress of AIMF, this COP of cities is the first. I would like to thank all the networks of the international cities that said that what is she doing again, but they came, that is worth being with them, because together we are stronger than alone. I would like to thank them as well. Thank they are here behind us, all these networks of local elected, of local powers that are extremely important. I think we should move in a coordinated way. The Francophone world, the English-speaking world as well, and a subject that must belong to all of us, which is a subject of solution. I will quote Francois. He said that we have to know and make known we are in this crossroad, because there is a lot of actions that will be stronger and more effective if we were more supported, and if the financing were flowing on the planet and were going in the right way, which means that to support the questions that we ask here. And also I think about the discussion that I had with the mayor of Niamey, also the question of the zone, the area close to the desert and the Sahel area. We have to have a particular work. It's better that we all gather and bring that, make known what we do and make it known, is by using all the means to make it known. So is what we're doing here by connecting all our networks, but putting into profit everything that we say together by social media, our personal account, our cities, all the activists, etc., say what is going on here. So the cities want to take part. We consider that we are legitimate and we are useful and indispensable to take part to the world governance, to this multilateralism. We are actually indispensable of the climate question to make known, having work like we did it today, and bring it as well, this advocacy to climate change during the next Congress, the COP Congress in November. Make it known is to continue in our countries, talking about it with the national authorities, the economical world, to know that we cannot just be guided by some short-term interests of few people. It's true that it's gonna take some courage and energy to make it known. Is when some of us take some initiatives and are attacked by this old world that wants to go back to something that does not exist and will not exist, and that was not something that allowed the well-being of the humanity, but only for few people. Make it known is to tell them that no, this is how we would like to move on and to support each other mutually. What we do is when some of us are in difficulties because the capacity to make fix change is being contested, make it known is to meet once again permanently and invent new ways of doing things. Positively, to make it known is to give more space to the youth to work. I'm thinking about the AMF in place of the youth in the decision that we make. Is also, for example, make it sure that what we note is the corporation cooperate at all levels, cooperate at all the scales, that the central powers will not stop with the mayor as entire power, but power that indispensable to support the politics that will allow our population to work and live better, is to also allow with the AMF to imagine forms of champion countries in which a country might give itself as objective to get to this convergence, this coordination. As the mayor of Kigali, Dear Prudence, just said earlier, when we are facing, when you were saying, Robert, the floodings in Abidjan, we cannot fix them by ourselves. We need at some point that the government will be here in all these competencies, and that beyond our political differences that are legitimate in democracy, we might nevertheless cooperate on objectives which are objectives that would allow to live better. So this is my message. Thank you very much to each and everyone. Thank you for this trust. Thank you for the well-being to meet and exchange. I think Visio allow to meet, but physically is really good. Is a joy for these social animals that we have, that we can meet us. We can all meet. Thank you, and see you in Charming Czech. Thank you very much. So the round table must come for the signature.
Je propose au maire.
I will propose at the mayors that are present in the room to go on the scene, please. To come upstairs. So we are asking all the different mayors that are present in the room to come up here for the family picture.
Merci mesdames et messieurs les maires pour la signature de ce plaidoyer.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, the mayor, for the signature of this advocacy and your round of applause.
Abidjan, perle des lagunes. Et Cité Verte est heureuse d'accueillir le congrès de l'Association internationale des maires francophones. Thème: maîtriser les risques, conjurer les peurs. Et la COP des villes avec pour thème: agir avec les villes pour le climat. Du 28 juin au 2 juillet 2022 au Palais de la Culture de Treichville. Abidjanais, Abidjanais, mobilisons-nous pour la réussite de cette rencontre mondiale de haut niveau. Abidjan, perle des lagunes, des lumières et Cité Verte est heureuse d'accueillir le congrès de l'Association internationale des maires francophones. Thème: maîtriser les risques, conjurer les peurs. Et la COP des villes avec pour thème: agir avec les villes pour le climat. Du 28 juin au 2 juillet 2022 au Palais de la Culture de Treichville. Abidjanais, Abidjanais, mobilisons-nous pour la réussite de cette rencontre mondiale de haut niveau. Abidjan, perle des lagunes, des lumières et Cité Verte est heureuse d'accueillir le congrès de l'Association internationale des maires francophones. Thème: maîtriser les risques, conjurer les peurs. Et la COP des villes avec pour thème: agir avec les villes pour le climat. Du 28 juin au 2 juillet 2022 au Palais de la Culture de Treichville. Abidjanais, Abidjanais, mobilisons-nous pour la réussite de cette rencontre mondiale de haut niveau. Abidjan, perle des lagunes, des lumières et Cité Verte est heureuse d'accueillir le congrès de l'Association internationale des maires francophones. Thème: maîtriser les risques, conjurer.
Juste vous dire que le repas sera servi au restaurant tout de suite. Vous invitez à rejoindre la salle du restaurant qui se trouve en bas. Et vous rappeler que la visite de la forêt du Banco est prévue cet après-midi. Il y aura des bus qui vous attendront devant le Palais de la Culture à 14h30. Et j'en termine juste en remerciant tout le monde de sa présence. Merci beaucoup.